A former military pilot, Cooper, lives with his 2 children and his elderly father-in-law on a farm with crops that seem to be consistently failing due to environmental changes. One morning, Cooper and his family go to a baseball game for some quality time together, but the event ends early due to a sandstorm covering the entire town. Hurrying back home with their mask and goggles on, Cooper tells everyone to make sure all the windows of the house are closed. Panicking after remembering that she had left the window to the library open, Murph rushes up the stairs followed by her father, and the two are surprised by a strange anomaly. They notice the dust forming on the floor. Staying adamant about there being a ghost in the house, Murph tells her father that she assumes it was the poltergeist who did it. After the storm passes, Murph finds her father sitting on the floor of the library, staring at the lines of dust formed uncharacteristically. When she sits next to him, he explains that it wasn't ghosts, but gravity that caused the anomaly. After a few hours of thinking, Cooper figures out the lines were binary codes for certain coordinates. Setting the coordinates on the GPS, Cooper drives to the place with his daughter and is surprised to find an active NASA base, as he had assumed they had closed down with the army. After being taken into the compound and introduced to Amelia, she takes him to a room full of researchers, including her father, who he already knew. Professor Brand takes him on a tour of their secret facility, showing him the ship they had been working on and the research they had been doing, explaining that even the corn they were able to grow would die out soon. Professor Brand tells him that soon their Earth would be completely uninhabitable for humans, so they had been sending teams out into space to find people a new home. The professor offers Cooper a chance to contribute to the mission by leading it, telling him that it would be a chance for him to save his family. A few minutes later, Cooper is taken back to the meeting hall, where he is told a wormhole had opened near Saturn 48 years ago, and it would lead them to a different galaxy with inhabitable worlds. Showing details of the launching station, the professor reveals his groundbreaking work on a gravity equation that could save humanity by transporting masses of people from our dying Earth. He promises Cooper that by the time he returns, he will have solved the problem. Back at their house, Murph is devastated that her father has decided to accept the mission. Saying goodbye to his family, Cooper sets out to return to NASA, and then embarks on the journey to find a suitable planet for the inhabitants of Earth. With 3 other crew members and 2 AI computers, Cooper makes the launch and manages to successfully leave the planet, docking on the station placed in orbit. Once they enter the station and activate the false gravity and oxygen inside, they settle in, gathering around to hear a message left by Professor Brand. Once they get their farewell message from the professor, the team prepares to enter a stasis state. When he's left alone, Cooper records a message for his family, explaining that he is about to go down for a long nap, and expressing how much he already missed them. 18 months later, the ship is approaching Saturn, and the crew is awakened from deep sleep. Cooper checks the messages that he has received over that time, but he's disappointed that he hasn't received anything from Murph. The team is informed that they will approach the wormhole in 3 hours, indicating that the crew should get ready. Once they're all fastened in their seat, they see the spherical wormhole close by and make their way into it. The ride inside the sphere is bumpy, and they notice space and time being bent all around them. A few minutes later, the ship comes out the other side, and they realize they have already made it to the other galaxy. Coming together, the crew starts to discuss all the planets that had been thought to have potential from previously sent Australians. The 2 that had the most potential were orbiting another large black hole with a massive gravitational pull that would affect their time compared with Earth if they decided to get close. Romilly explains that every hour they spend on that planet would be 7 years back on Earth. Unwilling to waste all that time, Cooper comes up with a plan to lose a little fuel but save more time, which would help them in the long run. After they all agree, Romilly stays behind while Cooper, Doyle, and Amelia go down to the planet to retrieve the findings of the original Australians, Miller. Although they struggle a bit due to the incredible gravitational force, Cooper manages to land the small ship safely. Amelia and Doyle leave the ship to retrieve the beacon in the middle of the vast ocean, but are only able to find the wreckage of Miller's ship. In front of them, Cooper notices an incredibly large wave heading their way and rushes his teammates to return so they can leave. While Amelia manages to enter the ship, Doyle is flushed away by the heavy waves, his crew unable to save him. The dynamic nature of their ship enables them to float on top of the wave as it passes by, but its engines are unable to start until the water completely drains out. Cooper is livid at Amelia for not listening to him when he told her to come back and blames her for the death of their teammate. They would have to waste another hour on the planet, which would cost them decades back on Earth, or outside the gravitational field of the planet. A while later, another wave is about to hit, and Cooper is forced to spark the engine to get them out of there. When they returned to the mothership, they found Romilly, who had aged considerably, and he told them they had been gone for 23 years. Cooper heads to the transmission room and goes through the accumulated messages left by his family, which makes him tear up. He watches as his son grows up, has a family, and then finally decides to let him go, assuming that he is dead. The last transmission was from his daughter, who had never sent anything before. She tells him that it was her birthday, and she is now the same age he was when he left. Cooper is devastated by what he has done to his family and is unable to control the tears falling from his eyes. On Earth, Murph had continued in her father's footsteps and become one of NASA's researchers, working on helping Professor Brand succeed in his mission to get everyone off of the planet and to their new homes. A few hours after Murph sends the transmission to her father, Professor Brand falls ill and is on his deathbed. Calling Murph, he apologizes for lying to her all these years and explains that he had never been close to discovering the gravitational equation, and his only hope was that her father's mission succeeded, and they were able to repopulate the new planet with the fertilized eggs they had put aboard the ship. Saying his piece, Brand passes away. Back on the ship, the crew finds out that they have lost a considerable amount of fuel while down the planet and are forced to make an educated decision on which planet they need to go to. Amelia votes to go to the planet the astronaut Edmonds, who she was in love with, had landed on, but Cooper and Romilly decide to go to Man's planet instead because of the strong and consistent signal. When they get to Man's planet, they take their small shuttle and land where the active signal is transmitting. Inside the small constructed pod, they find Man in stasis and wake him up. When he sees people for the first time in decades, Man cries, holding Cooper in an embrace. A few minutes later, Man starts to explain details about the planet and the expeditions he had done in the last couple of years. While they're conversing, a transmission comes through from Murph informing them that the professor was dead. She then continues to ask whether they knew everything she had worked for was a sham, the mission being to colonize a world and start anew instead of saving people on Earth. Cooper and Amelia are shocked by the revelation, but it seems Man and Romilly had known all along. Feeling cheated from the time he could have had with his family, Cooper decides that he's going back to Earth to be with his children. Before he gets ready to depart, Cooper asks Man to show him where all the props were placed and where he had put the distillery site. On their way there, Man attempts to kill Cooper by pushing him off a cliff, revealing that he has lied about the planet's ability to sustain life. After the two struggle to overcome each other, Man cracks Cooper's helmet and leaves him there to die. Struggling to breathe, Cooper manages to find the long-distance transmitter Man had ripped from his suit and calls Amelia for help. Receiving the distress call, she takes the shuttle and flies to his location. Once rescued, Cooper reveals to Amelia that Man had deceived them regarding the planet. To alert Romilly, they attempt to establish contact with Man's camp. However, they are too late as he triggers a booby-trapped explosion that Man had set up, resulting in the unfortunate demise of Romilly as he attempts to revive the abandoned astronaut's decommissioned robot. Man takes the grounded Ranger and tries to make his way up to the mothership, but he is killed in an explosion after trying to dock manually, pushing the ship into a wild spin. In an attempt to save their only way back, Cooper devises a way to cause their ship to spin at the same speed as the mother and manages to dock successfully, stopping it from falling into orbit. Once they're in the Endurance, Cooper comes up with a clever plan to use the power of the Ranger to swing around the giant black hole like a slingshot. This will give the Endurance the boost it needs to reach the third planet, from where Edmund had been sending a signal. Once they sling themselves around the wormhole, Cooper detaches himself and one of the robots in their respective Rangers, letting them fall into the black hole because he knew they didn't have enough resources for two people. After letting himself fall, Cooper is subjected to incredible speed and particles that cause his Ranger to catch fire, forcing him to eject from the ship. Floating alone in the wormhole, he finds himself falling into a multiple-dimensional space where he can move in time, and finds himself looking at his daughter from behind the bookshelf of his old home, just as she was when he had left. He realizes that the entity his daughter had been referring to as a ghost was just him trying to reach out to her. He uses the power of gravity to move things around the room and send her a message in Morse code, but watches as his past self ignores his daughter's pleas to heed the warning. Suddenly, he receives a transmission from the robot he had sent out, who explains to him that someone had constructed a three-dimensional place in their five-dimensional reality, making time physically present. Cooper figures out that future humans who can navigate 5 dimensions made this place so he can send messages from the past. With the robot's assistance, Cooper uses Morse code on his daughter's watch to give her the information she needs to crack the gravity equation. In her own time, Murph realizes that it was her father communicating with her all along after going back to her childhood home to gain some perspective. She uses the information he has relayed to figure out how to save everyone on Earth. Cooper is confident that his plan has worked when he sees the 5-dimensional place close, and he is left floating out in space. When he awakens, Cooper finds himself in a hospital bed with a doctor and nurse checking up on him. When he asks where he is, they tell him that he is on the Cooper Station, a gigantic ark taking all of humanity to their new home. Cooper is told that his daughter is still alive but quite old, and that she will be arriving to see him in a few days. When he finally hears that she has arrived, Cooper goes to see her in the hospital, surrounded by her children and grandchildren, uniting in a teary embrace. Murph advises him to go find Amelia because she doesn't want him to see her die. Taking her advice, Cooper gets inside one of the newly developed aircraft and makes his way to Amelia. On the new planet, Amelia finds Edmund's dead body and buries it. She then takes off her helmet and breathes in the air, knowing that she will be able to give humanity a new beginning.